Marketeers are overloaded with perpetual questions from their respective businesses to have action plans in these dynamic times and changing realities with flexible enough strategies. According to the MIT Center for Digital Business, companies that have embraced digital transformation are 26% more profitable than their average industry competitors and enjoy a 12% higher market valuation. This is a clear illustration digital adoption and transformation is closing the gap between what customers expect and marketeers aim to achieve. We have congregated experts who are successfully doing it for their brands and will help us to answer some major queries around the new age marketing strategies and latest trends, what future beholds for marketing, and how to embrace tech and innovation in marketing as per business advantage through right marketing mix for a higher growth of sales. So this topic that we are going to discuss today is expectations of business from new age marketing. Now it's time to invite our expert, our first speaker. She is the Chief Marketing Officer for IBM India and South Asia. Before IBM, she has held leadership positions in digital sales and marketing with HSBC, L&T Insurance, Mahindra Holidays, and IIFL Wealth Group of companies. And has also worked at Marico to manage brands like Saffola and Medica. She has been on the impact list of India's 50 most influential women 3 years in a row. She has also been awarded Economic Times Tech CMO of the Year honor in 2020. In 2021, she has been elected to the Governing Council of IAMAI. She interviews Indian CEOs on her successful podcast series, Being CEO with Deepali Naair. So without further ado, please welcome our first speaker for this session, Ms. Deepali Naair. Thank you so much, Deepali, for joining in. Next up.
Thank you for having me here, Pooja.
Next up, as the Chief Operating Officer, he heads sales, marketing, business development, product, operations, solutions, and support for Gupshup enterprise messaging business that has grown to become the leading cloud messaging platform under his leadership. He has been awarded US patents for innovative cloud data management inventions. Please welcome Mr. Ravi Sundararajan, please. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Pooja.
Next up, Chief Marketing Officer at Lenovo Asia Pacific with proven track record of successfully launching new brands and reinvigorating existing brands and businesses. He has diverse experience in industries which is FMCG, consumer technology, and B2B technology businesses. Please welcome Mr. Bhaskar Choudhuri, please. Thank you so much for joining in.
Thank you.
Next up, National Head Enterprise and Government Business at Jio, having cross-functional experience in integrated telecom business operations, including B2B, direct sales, large account management, indirect channel sales, collections, turnkey projects, etc. Please welcome Mr. Salil Khanna, please. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Khanna.
Good evening.
Good evening. And next up, we have our session moderator, Chief Business Officer at Hindustan Times, business leader, management consultant, and transformation advisor to global enterprises and startups. He has been featured as top 100 great people manager in the year 2019. With utmost pleasure, let's invite our session moderator, Mr. Shalil Gupta, please. Thank you so much, Mr. Gupta, for joining in.
Thank you, Pooja. Thanks for the introduction.
Over to you.
Thank you. In fact, while you were introducing Deepali, I was just trembling myself. I'm saying, how can I be asking any questions from Deepali? Why so many accolades are there across to her and to the panelists? But thank you very much for joining us, Deepali. It's a great and pleasure and honor to have you. But other than that, I would say most of the speakers is August speakers with us today. Various industries, importantly, Reliance, Jio, Lenovo, IBM, Gupshup, which is probably a digital native company. I'm looking forward to have a nice and exciting discussion among ourselves, and really talking about as how marketeers and a CMO office is today becoming a hot seat across the board. how CEOs have changed their expectations in terms of looking at a marketing function completely differently. With this in the context, one thing which is very, very important for us to understand, I think very nicely, I would call it marketeers today or CMOs today are creating escape velocity for organization. I think, we are no more in the world which was 2019 December. If you compare from 2019 December to now, I think scale is one thing which is most of the time being talked about, whether it's the traditional companies, whether it's the digital native companies. How do we address the customers to the remotest areas, not only in India, but they can be anywhere from Arctic to Antarctic Circle actually, and still be present with them, still deliver my services to them. I think it's the ideal probably vision of any CMO, I would call it that way. When we say escape velocity, there are two things which comes in mind. Why velocity and escape? One, direction. And I think if you look at from a direction perspective, it's very important for a CMO to create a belief, and that belief should create and meet the consumers and customers' needs. It's very genuinely has to be done. Whether we do any sort of marketing, if genuinely we are communicating with that belief, I think that's the direction a customer will definitely go for. And the second part of any velocity is speed. And if you're running with a very slow speed, you may land up in a Goa beach, but nothing to do with the business. But I would say speed is very important. You have a very brief time to create an impression on the customer's mind. And therefore, if you combine this with scale, you have something called escape velocity for an organization. And it stands out in the 4 or 5 pillars. Content, usually people used to say content is a king, but I would call it content is God today. If at all, I would say consumer journey, customer journey becoming very important, the second pillar. The third pillar is the various experiences customer would like to have it. Fourth is how we evolve the customer and our relationship with them. And the last one is the privacy, the security, the trust which you want to create with the customers. Some of the data points, guys, which I'm going to share with you is 57% of the CMOs have said that, I'm going to work with the CIO technology leader in my organization to start thinking very differently from a marketing tech automation perspective or reaching out digitally to my consumers and customers. Second, we heard 60% of the CMO says that customers will themselves create their own experiences. We will only enable it. And that's a very different ask because the market of one is what we are now looking at it. We are not looking at a market of many now. We're also looking at the 60% of the CEOs are thinking of building relationship with the customers. It's beyond that. And a very good example is Lenovo. I'm sure, Bhaskar, the community which you have created around your devices is more important for you than actually any other, marketing perspective. And similarly, Reliance, the biggest community you're disrupted while you entered into the market. I think that's very, very important for us to understand, create those trust relationships. So CEO's expectations are not wrong. And lastly, I would call it omni-channel to omni-consumption. We'll touch base on all of these subjects while having our discussion, guys. But with this as a context, thank you very much. It's an honor and a pleasure to be with you all today. I will definitely start with the lady first. So Deepali, over to you. Very simple question. Today's CEOs are very different. I'll tell you why. Two things. One, the leadership and the culture of a CEO is somehow this way operating. If they are having a new playbook and an old leadership style, that will not function. If they have new leadership style with the old playbook, that will also not function. So they're really all looking at new leadership, new playbook in the market. With this, the CEO's expectation with marketeers, CMOs is very different. Can you just throw some insight as to why this is different? And then we'll go to all of the panelists.
Sure. So first, Shalil, thank you for those words of praise right at the beginning on the accolades. But let me tell you, I'm a big admirer of what Bhaskar does at Lenovo. He and I have spoken enough about, some of the things that he speaks about. So let me say that. And great respect for, what Gupshup has done and what, I think the wonderful things happening at Jio. Having said that, you know that I run the podcast with the CEOs also, right? This is a great question for me to answer, to say, how is the expectation different? And I want to take examples from my own professional career of the last 10 years. I think what has happened definitely in the service sector where I have been, financial services, holidays, and now, technology domain, is that all the traditional KPIs that CMOs had, brand health, customer advocacy, trust, and all the, you established content as king, CMOs have to deliver on that. But additionally, thanks to the digital journeys and digital transformation that has happened, CMOs are now responsible for KPIs such as customer lifetime value, such as retention, such as loyalty. And even, at IBM, for example, I even carry the new pipeline and the new revenue number. So I think that's where life has changed considerably. Of course, the CMOs have to partner the CEO on the area of digital transformation, customer experience, which has become very dominant in the last 2 years, and a lot of projects have got accelerated because of that. So the CEOs tend to look at the CMOs also for that. So these are the three buckets that I look at. But if I look at my own life in the last 2 years, I tend to think of myself as a facilitator. I always tell the team also that I think the marketing organization needs to evolve and say, are we touching the lives of every function inside the organization to ensure that our customer experience, pre-sales, during sales, post-sales, is better? I will leave it there just now, Shalil.
Good, very, very good starting point, Deepali. I think, and when I see you are people delivering on the revenue or a new pipeline, you are no more a support function, and in fact, no more a facilitated function. You are actually now a business function. As any other sales function would be, a marketing is also becoming equally important there. And other than enabling, I'm just passing the baton across from Deepali to Bhaskar, to yourself as well. And then I'll come to Salil and Ravi. Bhaskar, just I'm changing a little bit of a question here. Right? Two things used to separately work. Right? Brand performance has to work separately, and then demand generation has to work separately. But I'm seeing of late this is not converting, and this is converging into one thought process, the way we are looking. And digital is believed to helping us in that sense, right? Very quickly, I mean, what's the new expectations you think you have it from your CEO desk perspective? And especially in a country like India, because India is a country of many countries. So it's not easy to think very differently from what a global Western world would be doing.
Thanks, Salil. First up, again, thanks for your kind comments, both to you as well as to Deepali. I don't know if I'm deserving of the kindness that you bestowed on oneself. Addressing your question, would want to start with a bit more of context. And if you look at around 4 or 5 years back, marketing and indeed the CMO's office was undergoing a huge crisis of confidence. And you had that very fated, I think, hiring firm report which said that of all CXOs, it is the CMO which has the least amount of stint or duration. And the quoted number was less than 2 years among all CXOs. And I think what has happened over the last 3 years, by accelerated significantly by the situation that we've seen emanating out of COVID restrictions, is slowly marketing, slowly or in some cases very rapidly, marketing has found its place on the table. Because when this sort of a situation came, what has actually happened is your traditional path to purchase in most cases or for most industries have collapsed.
Yeah.
And by default, the CEO has actually turned to the person or turned to the individual who probably has the most intimate view, at least of purchase decision journeys, if not of the consumer or the customer herself or themselves. And this has provided, or this has opened up a world of opportunity where we are reclaiming, or there is a chance to reclaim our rightful part or position on the table and be the voice of the consumer or the customer. And in these cases, allowed the organization to not only rebuild, but also find new paths of purchase, which has helped the organization tide over this really unprecedented times. So in most cases, when your traditional sales routes have failed or traditional sales routes have come to a standstill very abruptly, it's actually the CMO's office in more cases than one, which have retraced how consumers could possibly be searching for products, comparing products, researching products, and finally fulfilling their purchase requirements. And obviously, the post-purchase part was always reliant on marketing, and that has been a very, very critical sort of value that most CMOs have been able to bring back to the organization, and in that sense, bring back in a very strong manner their rationale or their locus standi within the CXO table.
But I think you raised very nice points, Bhaskar, there. And I really like the reclaim part of it, because somewhere over the period of last 2 decades till, let's say, 2018-17, I think marketing function was supposed to evolve, but the investments around marketing function was not being ready at that point of time. I think it's good that, in a way, a silver lining in the pandemic, because suddenly we were remotely working and suddenly we have to reach out to a customer with accuracy, with context, with information, and digitally driven. I think there is no other way to evolve other than evolving the marketing function and moving it forward. I think that's big change I have seen. But at this point of time, when we look at new methods and tools coming into play, we are looking at changing from omni-channel to omni-consumption. And it's a very important change which I have seen. You know, we used to say omni-channel as any channel you adopt as a customer, I should be able to take you through. But understanding through data and through analytics, and now increasingly AI and becoming machine learning becoming very important, where the customer is consuming and how they are consuming, what is the most likelihood of that person to consume which channel, we should know beforehand. I think that's where only consumption comes in place. And Ravi, I'm coming to you because, first of all, Ravi, I like the name Gupshup. That's a very Indianized way of, I call it Adda Baji, and we used to do Gupshup every time. I love it. And I'm sure there is a sound reason of having a Gupshup as a name, but it's a fantastic organization. But your way of thinking, as I say, new tools are being evolved and data has been evolved over there. What is your viewpoint as to change environment around the CMO and the marketing perspective?
Thanks, Shalil. Yeah, so I do agree that a lot has changed, not only around the world but also in India. What you have seen in the last 2 years, Gupshup is a global organization. We are headquartered here in Silicon Valley, but obviously our biggest market is India. We started off for the reasons that that we wanted to do engagement there in India and South Asia and go rest of the world. Emerging markets is our key area of focus. And when we compare India with other emerging markets, the adoption of even omni-channel usage and omni-consumption, as you say, because it's all driven by, you want to go where the customers are. And the customers were not completely digital because of various reasons. Bandwidth, reach, mobile usage is the highest in India. That's kind of where it is. So now that whole thing has changed the last 2 years with the combination of innovation in available bandwidth, in new technologies like wallets and UPI and so on and so forth, and also the need, because the pandemic has caused people to work remotely. So now all brands, to actually reach these consumers, they have to not only go omni-channel, as you said, go where the customers are, but also take them to the journeys where the consumption is. It's not really about just, as Bhaskar rightly pointed out, it's just not post-purchase. It's pre-purchase, purchase. So you want to do them, and also the life cycle is completely changed. Sometimes for some brands, the customer lifetime value, as Deepali has said, you start off initially by researching and getting more information about the product that you want to get, and making these things contextual, targeted, and personalized. So the new mantra is one-on-one with everyone. That's how the world has changed. Because you want to say that, hey, I feel special. I'm getting something that's catered to me, that's personalized, that's targeted at the time I want, when I want, where I am, irrespective of what that is. And before, that was not the case. And especially in India, that's become acute. The last 2 years, we've seen 100% growth. We do about 6 billion kind of engagement conversations, right, for various brands per month. And that is, a huge growth. And that is, has completely transformed marketing. You can say digital transformation, adoption of digital stuff, availability of data. What that has done is taken marketing from just being a cost center before, as you said, how CEOs used to be, okay, there's a cost center, they're doing something, there's some stuff in the post-purchase, it helps in the brand value and NPS and CSAT and stuff like that, but that's completely changed. You're going through the entire customer journey, and they've become kind of, as Deepali and Bhaskar also mentioned, now you're responsible just not for the brand, but also you're going all the way from revenue generation to actually engaging them, giving them the right information, and nudging them across, giving them personalized care, and taking them through the entire customer journey. So it's completely changed how you view marketing, how you look at customer consumption, and reaching them through various other channels where they are. So basically, I would just say it's become personalized, targeted, contextual, and one-on-one with everyone. So that's the key thing.
I'm going to use this somewhere, right? One-on-one with everyone. Believe me, I'm going to steal this thing out. But I like conversational, contextual, and it's very important because earlier, I think we were not able to do it because the technology was not available. Tool was not available. But now we have it. But I've kept the best for the last. Salil, I'm coming to you, frankly speaking. I really want to know the secret sauce. How did Reliance Jio become Reliance Jio? Frankly speaking, whatever we talk about, whether it's, and I'm openly saying it's IBM or it's Lenovo or it's Gupshup, we can't beat you guys, okay? I mean, think about, you came late, you're number one, you're disrupting every day, from a very small kid, known who can speak, knows about Reliance Jio today, to my grandparents, if I could say, they would also know about it. I mean, it's not easy, Salil. It would have been full of challenges, full of obstacles, but I want to know the secret sauce. I think that's the question I will have it with you.
I think if I take you back in our journey of last 4 or 5 years, see, one message was very clear from our chairman. We do not want to be the 13th or the 14th telecom company of this country. We will be the first digital company of this country. I think that was the mandate, and there was a power of self-belief. There was a time when people said that India is not the market for 4G. It is too expensive. It can never catch up, and so many naysayers, right? But there was a power of self-belief. There was a method in the madness, and single-handedly, this company took India from a bandwidth scarce country to a bandwidth abundant company. Anywhere you need it, at the cost which everybody could afford it. And I think that is what has changed life for all of the enterprise segment, be it B2C companies, be it B2B companies. The way a CMO or a CEO was able to think about how to take business to the growth trajectory has completely changed over the last 3-4 years, right? The kind of changes or the transformation which has happened towards the consumer side. Largely it is driven from there. Earlier, companies, whether you are a B2B company, B2C company, you try to think that how do I grow next? Because the challenges were mostly beyond, your direct control of things. The consumer or the customer at the end of the, end of the spectrum was not digital, was not targetable, was not reachable in the way it is today. And I think that's what has that kind of a belief and that kind of a very clear goal that we don't want to be a telecom company, we'll be a digital company, and in the process we'll transform the entire society, right?
No doubt.
We'll completely digitally transform the entire society. And I think whether it is IBM, Lenovo, Gupshup, I think everybody can relate to what has happened in India and how Jio has enabled that transformation.
No doubt,
Right?
Salil. Yeah.
And also, you see, in legacy world, there was a chief sales officer, chief operating officer, CMO, CIO, CTO. But now you are hearing, designations or profiles like chief growth officer. chief innovation officer, chief digital officer, and all of them are actually, the transformed or the metamorphosis of what a CMO is aspiring to become, or what a CEO is asking CMO to become. Lead the
What
growth
a
for me, right?
what a nice way, Salil. I am going to use this. What a very nice way to actually tell the world that CMO is actually also a chief growth officer. CMO is also a chief innovation officer. Hats off to you, man. I think it can't be said better. Let's say this way.
Thanks. So I think, how things have changed in the hands of a CMO, what he or she can do today over last 3 or 4 years, where now it is not only, profiling of the consumers or the customers. Actually, it is, you can think of from acquisition to engagement to creating right experiences, pre-purchase, post-purchase. Now it's a one large continuum, right? There are no more silos that I will acquire, then I'll build my brand, then I'll, measure customer engagement, I'll improve customer experience. But it is a one, long continuum. You can reach customers 24/7. You can understand, customer in a much more intimate way.
True.
What he does before this pre-purchase journey, what he does after that. And I think the CMOs or the chief growth officers who understand that it is today possible to know your customer so intimately that you can predict what he or she is going to do. How can you lead him or her into certain, life cycle journey, and then, keep on improving his or her experience, throughout the life cycle. I think that's the big change, and the more the marketing people, marketeers, understand this and try to leverage what has happened on the consumer side. Now, every consumer is a smart and a connected individual.
True.
The marketing skill set of yesterday are not going to work today.
Absolutely. And we'll come to the skill set in the last, Salil. But I want to continue and pass the baton with something which you said, that it's a continuum. It's a journey, pre-post, which is kind of evolving. And I'm sorry to say, I'll go back to Deepali and then to others as well. The second part of our discussion, which is very important. There are 3 E's which are very important, and as the journey specified, right? The first one is, as Salil said, that expectations. Are we understanding our customer, whether a B2B environment or a B2C environment? And that is the first E, which is expectations. The second E is experiences. And we don't create experiences. I mean, it's a myth. I think customers themselves will create their own experiences. Are we enabling the right experiences based on the expectation? And then the engagement. I think the best part of the marketing is probably if you are able to create engagement, which creates advocacy, which creates loyalty and NPS, and there are various ways to measure it. But these are all disjointed. I mean, time and again, my research, my personal understanding of the market says that these are very, very disjointed. Some pieces have been integrated, but not all. Okay. Would you agree with me, Deepali, very briefly, and what's your viewpoint?
So I think something in transition always looks disjointed in the middle, and I just want to add to what you're saying, Salil, before I explain with the framework in my mind, right? I think in the last 10 years, the MarTech solutions themselves, what Salil both of you, Salil, have been saying about, digital and data and understanding the customer. There are 8,000 different MarTech solutions in the world today, and this has happened only in the last 10 years, okay? The MarTech industry, which gets money from the CMOs, is about 350 billion USD across the world, right? UK and North America themselves is about 150 billion. So that tells you the change. I'm just trying to indicate to you the change that has happened, and the solutions and the tools that are available to marketers today to take decisions on the basis of data, understand the customer, and do it in real time. So I think that's what has changed. The other framework that has changed, if you just step back, the way you used to look at the brands, we would do a B2C versus B2B division, which, you've been talking about. I've started looking at brands very differently. I feel that we're just chasing, real estate on a screen. you know.
True.
And either you're a brand in yourself where you want that piece of real estate on the screen yourself, and therefore you are Amazon or you are Netflix or you are Geo, you know, or you have to be a brand which is part of the ecosystem which the Amazon and the Netflix and the Geo is bringing together, you know. And I think
True.
that's the framework one needs to change and examine and say, okay, what kind of brand do we want to be? And that is where my dimension of B2C and B2B completely changes to say, you need to understand whether you're going to be a satellite brand, which is part of an ecosystem brand, and you can be part of all ecosystems, you know, or are you a brand which is developing an ecosystem? So that suddenly changes the way you look at marketing, the way you look at sales. I mean, whose responsibility it is to go and tie up with all these ecosystems and ensure that you're part of all the ecosystems. So that suddenly changes the nuances of how you do sales, how you do marketing, how you look at omni-channel consumption, etc. You know, so that's one framework change that I want to suggest. The third thing, the way you said 3 E's, you know, of expectation, experience, you know, creation on the consumer part. I think let's look at the reverse side. You know, we are, you know, two sides of the same coin, right? Well, therefore, what is happening to the marketer? So the marketer, I'm going to offer you 3 A's therefore, Shalil, and I have spoken about it earlier, right? Which is, one is that we need to be authentic, to be interested in the customer, to ensure that we understand that we're on the side of the customer eventually, solving their need, being authentic, being trustworthy, you know, as a brand and as an organization. Second is that we need to be very agile. What has changed for us in the last 2 years and what everybody's talking about is actually agility. And let me explain, agility is not about velocity. You know, it's about being comfortable with the idea of change. So it's not that I know my target and where I'm headed. The point is I don't know where my target is and I need to evaluate myself every 3 months, 6 months to say, am I going in the right direction? And therefore, am I comfortable changing direction? And how quickly I change direction? And CMOs and their teams have to develop that agility. You know, that's when you will be able to keep pace with the changing expectations that, you know, a customer has. Otherwise, the customer is going to run ahead. And the last bit is ability, the 3 A's. The ability is where I spoke about the MarTech thing and the skills that you said that you will bring in the end, because it's not just the MarTech skills ability, but also, you know, what skills the marketing team ought to have. So I will leave that to the last bit of the discussion.
So very, very counterintuitively, I would call it this way. So E, and A. I'm not going to forget that now. So again, I'm going to use it somewhere else. But, you know, taking the conversation forward, Deepali, as you said, authentic, agility, and ability about it. And disjointed, we are still joining something, but still disjointed. Ravi and Bhaskar, both of you, very briefly, I know time is also short for us. This would change how we measure and what we measure. And I think initially, Deepali also said that, you know, measuring traditional KPIs are all hygiene factors. We still need to do it better. But there are some new matrices which would flare up. According to you guys, what are those some new matrices audience should take care of? Anybody can start, no worries.
Yeah. So I would say that the way it's changed is, you know, that typically some things have changed and some things haven't changed, right? So end of the day, you know, they could be, as Deepali said, there are tons of MarTech tools. There are also the new things that are happening. She talked about networks, right? You can be a small brand like a Starbucks, right? And you're using Ola or Zomato or Uber or, you know, so many other things to deliver your product. There are a lot of other options available, right? So there are aggregator networks that come, but doesn't mean that people say, oh, you know, now I have to compete against even a mom and pop store that's there local, that's using these to deliver and they're always available. And I'm available in the same app and competing with them, right? But end of the day, Starbucks doesn't change what it is, right? So your product is the most important, and the basics of marketing 100 years from now, there'll be aggregators, there'll be MarTech platforms, there'll be digital technologies, but marketing is all about segmentation, micro-segmentation, knowing who your customers are, as Deepali said, being authentic to your customer, what is your value proposition to your customer and what's differentiated. That nobody can take away from you. Any technology may come, different networks will come and all that stuff. So knowing who you are, so once you know who you are, what do you want to measure, right? As you said, you can be part of a network, you can be part of a separate consumer brand, you can be an aggregator network, enablers and all that stuff. So the thing that you want to measure is, and it changes. You can't be static and say, I'm going to measure only this and that's it for the year, for a few years to come. It's very dynamic. Things change. At one point in time, you'll say, you'll define the wording, as you said, even in 3 E's, right? How do you measure expectations? Am I meeting the one-on-one expectations of every brand? How am I tailoring my product? How am I configuring it, right? So that depends on number of ways you handle SKUs, and the second thing is all about also engagement. It's a very loaded term. What does engagement mean? You know, how am I engaging my customers? And is it showing up in terms of repurchase rates? Is it showing up in terms of brand value, brand recognition, how good my brand is? And sometimes you're not an end consumer brand, they may be brands. You know, what networks effect am I enabling? So I think it's a combination of, you know, there are traditional tools like NPS, CSAT, retention, NRR, net retention rate. You know, am I acquiring and growing my customers? So there are a lot of tools, and as it is always, data is garbage in, garbage out. What you measure, it depends on what you actually track and do it. So I think, to boil it down, you know, I'm not answering your question as just this is the measurement thing. All I'm doing is saying it changes. So yeah. And there are traditional things that will never go away, but true. you have to find out what is it you're offering. How do I measure that? And the only way you can tell is, hey, over 3 months, lifetime value of my customer, net retention rate, CSAT, all the other NPS and a whole bunch of other tools, but also engagement, repurchase rates. And it's, you know, a lot of people also want to know where how the brand values and stuff like that. So it depends on what type of, you B2B, B2C, or in between, and which network you're playing. But end of the day, just being true to what you're trying to serve, that's kind of the most important thing to say.
And Ravi, nicely you alluded to something which is important for us to kind of, you know, summarize. Earlier, it was difficult to measure also because the data was not readily available. Today, I think because of being digital, we can actually measure it. So there is the vast change as to what we could now measure. Now, difficulty is we have got so much of data that we are finding it now, saying that, you know, what should be the real measures. Bhaskar, true?
2 quick comments before I get on to answering the question. Cannot agree more with what Ravi said. And as I see around, especially among mid-level or even junior level colleagues, and in some cases for non-marketeers, even the C-suite, one of the biggest challenges attitudinally that is facing us is how do we retain the basics and the fundamentals of marketing and not allow digital to become a distraction? Because there are enough and more examples where unfortunately this turns out to be a distraction, and you sort of lose your way to the lodestar. Second comment, taking from what you just said, Salil, again, a big thing that I've learned the hard way, measurement doesn't always mean effectiveness. These are two different things. With the advent of digital, there is a surfeit of measurement KPIs that you can get. But unfortunately, most of them are bottom funnel. Most of them are conversion metrics. So your brand actually, in terms of, to use literary terms like mental availability, might be really taking a knocking there. And you might be blinkered and only looking at your conversion percentages or bottom funnel metrics and think that all is well with the world till the day or till one fine day when your tap runs dry because nothing was entering the funnel for you to get out at the bottom of the funnel. Now, coming back to your original question on what do we measure, two broad streams and some examples of that from personal experience of what we do in Lenovo. See, what digital is allowing us to do more when we are looking at online to offline purchases is actually track the consumer or the customer at all parts or all different touch points during the journey. So in addition to all the metrics that you had at top funnel, middle funnel, whether it's your salience metrics, your consideration or interest metrics, and finally your purchase or conversion metrics, you now can track the metrics for the same consumer or same customer across the journey. So one aspect which is really going up is looking at conversions as the consumer or customer moves from different stages of the journey. So the conversion percentages, because you're able to track the journey of the same individual, become a very important part of the metric and a very important diagnostic tool as to where that person is falling off the funnel. Second one, increasingly marketeers are being tasked also with CX. Now, if you put into your discipline a structure where you can measure satisfaction points or net promoter score at all the 20, 30, 40 measurable touch points that the consumer has during the consumer purchase decision journey, then that's the interesting metric which is coming up, where marketing has the unique ability to show the mirror to the organization, because you're not the owner of all the touch points. In most cases, it's sales. In some cases, it's service. In some cases, it's retail. In some cases, it's even supply chain. And you therefore, in a default or de facto manner, become the owner of the management scorecard. The second big different stream that I want to touch upon is consumers increasingly, and even governmental organizations or customer organizations, are being driven. I wouldn't want to say purpose because that's a much abused word, but what are you doing as a corporate citizen? And therefore things like governance, citizenship, or ESG as a charter. How friendly, for example, one of the things that we measure is how many our products in 5 years are going to be passed by a chief diversity office, so that diverse people or disabled people are not hindered by the interface, but can use it equally well as UN. So how do you measure considerations like that? And there we follow something called a RepTrack score, where actually it tries to cover the brand score across 6 or 7 different parameters, which have nothing to do with your classical marketing. Might in some cases be led by more PR metrics, but it has very, very important bearings in the way that you're crafting your message and the way you're showing up as a corporate citizen.
Bhaskar, can't agree more. In fact, ESG is not only a key metric for CMOs or product lines and solutions, but I've overly seen boards and CEOs, bonuses are resting on ESG parameters. So I think it has become the key indicator for any organizations to raise capital, for any organization to think about creating a carbon neutral, sort of a solutions and product into the market. It has become an important aspect. Time is very, very short, guys. I want to really touch base, and it's interrelated actually. I see CMO's budget going up by 20 to 30% because of 2 big issues. One, we have changing skill sets. I think the playbook of CMO has changed, and because of the playbook has changed, the skill set requirement has also changed. At the same time, data and data privacy and security and the laws around the globe, from GDP to India, I think this will mandate CMOs to think very differently. And I'll take brief comments very briefly, Salil and Deepali, both of yours in the last. What are your thinking around first skill set changes and your data and data privacy and data security issues? Salil, you go first. Okay. Because we want Deepali to be the last.
Okay. The skill set game, you see, like in Geo, we follow a very simple mantra. Can a marketing head give us a product and experience for the customer so that sales becomes only fulfillment? So the entire role of sales is, can you fulfill what customer is demanding? Because I am creating a product, I am creating a value proposition, I am creating an experience which is unbeatable for the customer. So customer is definitely, is going to be interested. Second, how do I make it, instead of curating bundles and curating products, how do I make it a customer enabled for a self-discovery, self-exploration, self-evaluation of the product, and then go on to the self-buy journey, which is nothing but a DIY, in simple terms. And wherever needed, then you back it up by a assisted journey. So assisted could be a physical assisted, where you have people hand-holding the customer, or you again do it digital. So I think that's the skill set, or that's the end outcome expected from a CMO. And CMO suddenly, one of the most important skill set is that he has to be a technology leader. He or she has to be a technology leader. Unless until you understand technology, unless until you have clearly in your head that how do I, do the digital transformation for the entire organization, I think you are going to not to be measuring up to the benchmark which your CEO is going to be expecting from you. I think that's the big change. That's the kind of a skill set which a CMO needs today.
Got it. Deepali, over to you.
So I just want to explain what Salil said, that the expectation from the CMO himself or herself today is that needs to be a equally right brain and left brained. On one side, I don't think that creativity, innovation expected out of a CMO's office, is gone away. That is going to remain. But to be able to understand, data and take decisions on the basis of data is an additional factor that has come in. And therefore, all the things that, the panelists have said in terms of, the matrix discussion that we had earlier, right? And Salil very rightly said that the whole technology space is, become very important. I just want to add one thing, that I think as an MNC brand, it has become incumbent on us to ensure that we follow the strictest GDPR norms, since you asked that question. And I think data privacy is where, at least at IBM, we follow the strictest norms possible across the world. It does not even matter that, from a geo perspective, some country may have it easier than the other. We follow the strictest ones. But I think what is very important in this whole technology space is that I think marketers also need to start understanding data privacy and safety norms, how to share data. Okay, they need to understand that you need to be responsible for the whole cyber safety aspect. And I think that's a new area that marketers need to think about, because I do see, there are reports which will tell you, Ponemon report, for example, which tell you about, how brand reputation can be lost within minutes, and the amount of cyber attacks that are happening today on, established brands and large organizations. So within technology, I think where marketers are today focusing on acquiring data and MarTech skills, I would add a third leg to it to say, understand, brand safety and understand data security.
Completely agree, Deepali. And I think I've been hearing a term which is something called customer data lake. Earlier, we used to talk about data lake itself, any data, but I think we have to keep the privacy data separate from what the other data looks like. And therefore, the term has come out as customer data lake.
And guys, within the security domain, the word that is used is zero trust.
Zero trust.
Which means that all of us need to practice zero trust when in terms of evaluating our processes, and then look at it and say, okay, are we up there?
Yeah. But, I've been indicated many times now that Salil, you're overtime. I'm going to just, say two things. I mean, my favorite kind of books and professor and reading is something called, Clayton Christensen, and Competing Against Luck. He very nicely defines something called job to be done. Okay, he says, if a marketeer or a CEO or a product solution understands why he or she is hiring a product or a solution for what job to be done. But around this job to be done, there are 3-4 things which I'll probably say. One, he always says, don't look at easy data, look for difficult data. And I think because of the abundance of data in the digital, we forget that we can actually not looking at some of the difficult data. If you look at India is a very diversified country, I would call it, and a geographically diversified also. Getting a last mile data in India is the most difficult task. But I think you need to still get that. Until you get that, you will not be able to solve. Second thing he says is anxiety. If you are able to address the anxiety of the customer, whether B2B or a institutional customer or a B2B consumers, I think we forget we are humans, and sometimes in this forgetness, we are not addressing to the anxieties of the customer. I think that's very important, very emotional context, very social context before the functions and features comes in. So I think, and we are masters. India has been masters in that, because we play on emotional, anxiety, social context more than on function and features. But I think off late, we need to remind ourselves. And lastly, I would call it is, whether you use technology or not, let's make technology invisible for customers. Whether you are using a data privacy, whether you're using MarTech, automation, analytics, if the customer is having a visibility of a technology, don't pat yourself. But if the customer is not having a visibility of it's invisible, please pat yourself. I think I will leave these principles with you guys, but I've learned a lot today. It's an honor to moderate such an august panelist today. Thank you very much for giving us a precious time. And I'm sure the audience, I enjoyed personally, frankly, and audience would have also enjoyed it. We'll keep in touch and obviously see you next time and some other platform and discussions. But it's I can't thank enough, guys, for giving us the time today. I'll hand over back to Pooja, guys.
Thanks, Salil.
Thank you, Bhaskar. Thank you, Ravi. Thanks, Salil. And Deepali, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I think, Shalil, you just stole my words. This was my opening line when I came, that I learned a lot, and thank you to each one of you for doing this for us and sharing such an important discussion based on your personal experiences. And like we all know that the language these days is being digital. The 2 points that I could really resonate with was what Ms. Deepali mentioned, that it's so important to touch people's lives, the consumers' lives these days, because that definitely gives a very emotional connect, and there's a lot of satisfaction from the consumer end. And also what Mr. Ravi mentioned about the journey, the pre-purchase, the purchase, and the post-purchase. It's important to take care of all three aspects. And of course, apart from that, so many wonderful points that me and the audience, I'm sure, have taken back. So thank you very, very much to each one of you for doing this work. Thank you.